The birch tree had its many purposes in the survival of our Aboriginal people. Before we took anything from Mother Nature, we always had an offering, a thanksgiving to Mother Nature for her gifts. And we always have an offering of a prayer and an offering of sage to Mother Nature to thank her for her wonderful gifts. The birch tree, the bark was used for containers such as this tree. When you took the bark, you look for the side where you see all the little fluffs. That's the side you cut. The reason why this is like that is the wood part of the tree is growing, and the bark is growing around on top. Now this is like tight elastic. It's going to get tighter and tighter. In the cold winter month, when it gets freezing below zero, it tightens. It's so tight that the layers on top split open, and that's why we have these little fluffs. And that is the thin side of your birch bark. Now if you cut on the opposite side, you're going to have this thin part on the bottom of your basket. So in order to have a good solid container, this is the side you cut. Also, there is a purpose for these fine fluffs. Our people used to gather them and use them for starting their fire. This is just like paper. It's very thin and it ignites a fire easy. Before the matches came to be, our people used to save a lot of these, and also they had a growth taken from the birch tree. This we call puchstia. That if you put it against a fire and light it, it'll burn, but it will not go out unless you wet it or crush it. And that'll last for a long, long time. A long time ago, before matches came to be, the old people would gather the growth on the birch tree and save it, dry it and save it. If you're going to go somewhere and you're going to light, you're going to need your fire. You got to take it with you because there was no matches. What they would do is put this on the fire, put it in a clamshell and cover it. Along with it, you took the fine fluffs off the birch tree, as well as little bundles of pitchwood. You took that with you wherever you're going to start another fire. When you get there, you open your clamshell, you got your sparks in there, you blow it and feed it with the fine fluff of the birch bark, and it'll soon ignite. Then you feed it with the bigger ones and feed it with the pitchwood, which has a lot of oil in it. And that is how we started our fires a long time ago. Only a certain time of the year can we get our birch bark. Around about late in June and about middle of July, it'll start to stick, and then you can no longer get it. So what we do is we cut the bark along this fine fluffs, being very careful not to go too deep. You run your knife along the edge. Yeah, you can see it, see. See how it works.
Mm-hmm.
That's a dandy one. Push both sides and it'll go in the picture. There. And you see just a light scratch on this. Okay. Now you notice underneath that bark there is a pulp that covers the wood part of the tree. This exposed to air will turn a dark brown. It'll harden. Now my cut only did a scratch on the surface. That isn't going to harm the tree because underneath this pulp the sap will still go up the tree. If you happen to cut it too deep, the ends of this pulp will curl in and mend itself, but then you're exposing a certain amount of the wood, and that's where rot will start to go in, and that will slowly damage the tree. So it's very important to remember not to cut through the surface of the pulp. The wild cherry tree is another important tool for our baskets. This comes off exactly like the birch bark, and we have to cut it the same way we do with the birch bark to collect the decoration in our basket. It comes off just like the birch. They are a nice brown texture, and these are taken in little strips and used to decorate our birch bark and cedar root baskets. And these also you can turn a black by putting in the ground near an alder tree. You peel the root off the alder and you lay these over the root, and they turn black after a time. And the modern way is you put it in a bucket and you put rusty nails and rusty cans with water, and eventually they turn black. This tree has been cut quite a number of years ago. You can see where it has healed itself. This part down here was only done on the surface, so therefore the tree is in good shape. But up here you will notice where they must have cut too deep into the pulp, and it has curled in to heal itself, but it is still exposing a certain amount of the wood where rot will start to set in. It's always best to look wherever it's level, and if you can find an old rotted log, the roots from the cedar tree tend to be nice and soft, and that is what we used to sew our birch bark baskets together, and also make use cedar root baskets. You have to dig and dig to get the right kind of roots. After you've dug the roots out of the ground, then you have to learn how to split. In order to identify the cedar root, the root peels lengthwise this way. Other roots will peel around. Only the cedar root will peel lengthwise. So what we do is we have to get the root split in half right to the end. And we take again and we split another piece. Very fine. You also take this to the end. When you finish splitting, you have to take the sap out of every strand by putting the back of your knife against the root and pull. A lot of sap comes out. Now this here, it's nice and soft in comparison with this end. And when you have pulled all the sap out of every strand, you can roll it, put it away, and it'll keep for a long, long time. Oh, you have these flat ones for finishing the birch bark basket. Comes nice and soft. Also, we have to split some very, very fine for the fillers for the cedar root basket. There is a lot of practice to make it go right to the end, to have nice long strands of cedar roots to work with. By guiding your strand with your fingers and trying to get it right to the very end of your strip. These will be used for the fillers in your cedar root basket. It's very important when you're cutting out the basket to realize that the bark has eyelets and not to allow the corners of your basket to sit on the eyelet, because if you do that, when you start putting the basket together, you are going to find the bottom of your basket is going to crack. So it's very important to know that you're avoiding that exact corner on the eyelet. It's very important to have the little the corners bent down so that they will not rip when you start putting your basket together. Now bring the two top ends together. Make a little hole with your awl and put a stick to hold it. When you get to both sides up, you start to form your basket. You put another stick on that side. And you can also make your basket in various sizes. You have the little ones, the medium, and the large. Now to keep your basket together, you have to take the two ends that are out, get that tied in the bottom. This way you can cut out as many baskets and put them aside to finish later. This birch bark has a tendency to curl, but when they're prepared like this, they're there to stay. You don't lose your bark. Now we're going to be tying the bottom parts together. You notice that they have been very careful not to put the corners on an eyelet. And when that's tied down, that basket will be a really good basket. And baskets made like this will last almost forever if you look after them. Now here's one little basket that is ready to put, and you can make your sizes that they fit in each other. Perfect. That's a dandy one. The other one is almost completely done. And these two baskets will fit in together. You will have 3 or 4 sets of baskets in one. It's very important to tie that back so that it will keep. When that is completed, it's ready for the sewing on the sides. To join the 2 sides together, you use the cedar root. There is the split cedar root, and the cedar root that is not split you see on the table. These are the roots that you split to finish your basket. Saskatoon sticks. It's very important to know how to put your birch bark away for winter use. You make sure that you have the eyelets going to the ends. Then you begin to roll inside out. This way you have your birch bark rolled and it will not curl, and it be kept in a cool, dry place, preferably in a cellar. After we have finished putting our cut-out basket together, all tied down, we have to start by finishing the ends first. Have to stitch down the ends very, very tight. And then we start to put the finishing touch on the top side. First of all, we have to get our Saskatoon sticks, clean them. Saskatoon sticks has a tendency to grow in a sort of like a spiral. They never grow straight like other sticks. So when it's dry, it has a tendency to be very, very tough. When we gather them for the winter use, you clean them and you tie them up in little round circles and you hang them to dry, and these you can use in the winter time. When you've cleaned your stick, you make a circle and put it inside of your basket. And this helps to strengthen the top of the basket. Also, we put a strand of birch bark over on the outside of the basket, which also strengthens it. Then we start the tedious job of weaving. We take the cedar roots and we will start weaving. The stitches have to be fairly close together, but you have to stagger them, some long, some short, so that way it strengthens the finishing of the cedar or the birch bark. And then, of course, to fancy it up, we have the pin cherry or wild cherry bark, which has been cleaned to a beautiful brown, light brown. And that is cut in strips. It's cut in little strips to use for decorating the basket. Also, a long time ago, our people decorated their baskets by wetting. After it's completely done, you wet the bark and leave it for a while. Then you take the sharp object and scrape into the basket to put a design. The ponderosa pine needles is what we use to make our pine needle baskets. We get the long ones and we clean the ends. And some of it we are going to have to leave. We leave the buds on the ends of some of our baskets to decorate the basket. Also, we save the little cones of the new ends of the boughs. To put little handles on our basket. We weave our baskets with waxed nylon. At one time it would have been the sinew. We go in rows, making sure that we loop into the previous stitch. The longer your pine needles, the better. And you have to learn how to shape your baskets to any shape you desire. These type of little baskets were used for storing ornaments. Our women prize these kind of baskets. Today we tend to, my philosophy is to try and use some of the old and some of the new. So we have experimented with coloring our pine needles with modern type of coloring, which adds a beautiful color to our baskets. Some of the baskets we would like to try to keep to the pine needle, and that is on the little handles. This is quite a tedious job that takes a lot of patience, and you can form different kinds of just your own ideas, like we have the little turtles representing our turtle island, which is North America.